Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. The Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Bringing you the latest from the world of daily fantasy sports and gambling, so you can stop Googling how to join a squid game to cover all those parlays you thought were such a sure thing. Now, sit back and listen to one of the sharpest minds in the game. Here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
All right, guys, quick hitter today. Tomorrow we got the championship games in the NFL, but wanting to get into a couple items. Obviously, if you have not heard the news, it looks as though from multiple sources that Tom Brady is retiring from the NFL after 22 years. You know, I know folks hate the Pats and they hate Brady for a multitude of reasons, but you gotta respect it from this pure content alone, just how good Brady was in terms of producing headlines and storylines of you hate the Pats, you got so many controversies surrounding what they're doing. They're always finding ways to win. Brady's making comebacks. You have to give the man his props, no matter how much you hate him. So he will be missed if this is truly the end of the road for Brady. I could say that for sure because, you know, so many episodes I've covered involve talking about Brady in the playoffs and scenarios and what you got to do. And obviously, me being a Giants fan, you know, we always look through with glee beating the Pats and Brady, which is why Eli Manning's going to the Hall of Fame, of course. But, you know, all in all, just have to say the fact that it's coming to an end. You're not surprised, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge that it is an end of an era in the NFL where you've got an entirely new generation. Brady was the last of the old guard because Brady, it's 22 years. You look back at some of the games Brady's been in, and it's an entire generation of NFL players that grew up watching Tom Brady. And then they ended up playing against him. It's wild, but you know, when you have a length of a career that long, you have to give respect to the man and his work ethic. So I give Brady my props. It's not as though I make it any secret that I find Brady entertaining enough. It's great content. So I respect, and I will actually have to say I will miss having Tom Brady around on NFL Sundays moving forward. It's gonna be an adjustment. I'm not gonna lie. I know New England is crying about it because a bunch of bandwagon Pats fans became Tampa Bay Bucks fans when Brady left. But at the end of the day, I know folks are going to look at it as he won, but this is the whole argument of Bill versus Tom that we all knew would come to a head at a certain point. Tom would end up having to retire, and Belichick does not look like he's even remotely prepared to retire. As much as the Pats got thumped by the Bills, it's still workable with what the Pats have to try to get that team better. So, again, Brady got his ring with the Bucks last year in a Super Bowl run where he had a lot of question marks and questionable decision, but he outlasted the Saints. He got his win against the Packers, who again came up short yet again. It should have been a precursor, but it is what it is. You've got again a case where it's wild to say this, but it's the truth. It's the honest truth that Brady, you have to give the man his props. You may not want to say he's, you may not want to say that he's the GOAT for football, but, he's in the conversation at the very least. Yeah, his name is in there. Whether you like him or not, you have to give the man his props. So, hell of a career for Brady with all the passing accolades he racked up, and most importantly, the Super Bowl wins. You can't knock that. You cannot knock that. What he's been able to build in terms of groups of guys that will go to bat for him no matter what. Brady earned that respect, and he brought it. He absolutely brought it. I don't have question marks with Tom Brady when he loses. More often than not, it's because the other team found a way to play better and just execute. But it's not because Brady didn't bring it to the table. Even if he's having an off day, the competitor in him will not let him back down. And that's the thing you gotta admire the most about it. It's not so much as to whether or not he's winning or not. It's the fact of how great of a competitor he is. So I'm gonna get out with that. We'll talk about a couple other items and this news story that popped up because we knew it was gonna be massive getting mobile betting in New York. But, I hope people have contextualized how crazy this is. Since mobile betting has started up in New York State, it launched on January 8th through January 23rd. That's 16 days, people. The total amount of bets wagered, dollar-wise. Total bets wagered, dollar-wise. I just want you guys to sit down and truly digest the information I'm giving to you. 16 days. The total amount of money wagered in New York State alone on mobile betting is $1.2 billion. $1.2 billion. In 16 days. 16 days. Not the month. 16 days. We won't get the full numbers, obviously, for a couple more days. But the only states that come close to a billion normally, New Jersey, which has its own mobile betting, and Vegas, so Nevada. That's it. 16 days. New York is on pace to eclipse New Jersey in less than, I'll be honest, I think New York will probably, and the betting places still haven't even gotten off the floor yet. We still had DraftKings, FanDuel, BetRivers, and Caesars. Those were the first four. BetMGM and PointsBet just got launched within the past week. It's like there's so many places. I'm seeing so many sports betting commercials. It's hard keeping up with now. It's like you got to look through all the opportunities, to be honest. But let's be clear. 16 days. We haven't even gotten through an actual full month yet, because obviously January started a little bit later, but we haven't even come close. Super Bowl is gonna be here in 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. We haven't even gotten to the Super Bowl yet, and we've got over $1 billion in dollars wagered in New York. The Super Bowl is coming up. This is what everyone thought was, okay, we get the Super Bowl, and then, we get the mobile sportsbooks wagering, and like maybe you get a pop-off event for the Super Bowl to start things off and then kind of settle in for now. Let's be clear. The number has already been smashed. In less than a month, they cross over $1 billion. I don't even want to gather what the number is going to look for the Super Bowl. Whew, this is crazy. Wouldn't even my expectations, I couldn't have foreseen $1 billion in less than a month. full month, yeah, it's possible with the Super Bowl. Like, that was the thought process. Like, yeah, they could hit $1 billion with the Super Bowl. 16 days. We haven't even hit the Super Bowl yet, and they already crossed the $1 billion in New York. Ugh. And the Knicks are terrible right now. Oh man. I mean, 1.2 billion. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. But let's talk about the Knicks. We're going to talk about the Knicks briefly, and then I'll close it out with the Giants, but you know, this Julius Randle situation, you know, I'm not a big I told you so kind of guy. I just try to lay out the facts for you folks as to what the issues I see and let you at least come to your conclusion whether or not you agree with me, but I just try to be honest. Last year, when the Knicks got knocked out by the Hawks of all teams, and the Hawks went on their run, but the fact of the matter is it just highlighted the flaws of this Knicks team where they can put in as much effort as they want, but talent-wise, they were not close to being even remotely relevant in a true playoff chase scenario. Yeah, you can make the playoffs, but talent-wise, you aren't there. So, what did the Knicks do in the offseason? I told them they needed to blow up that roster because I didn't see enough from RJ Barrett to justify a long-term future with him. And Julius Randle was in a contract year. I hate giving players big money deals in a contract year when historically their numbers have not warranted being in that class. Some guys are that dude. I do not consider Julius Randle to be even remotely that dude. I consider Julius Randle to be that dude behind a dude behind a dude that's dude. Like, that's that dude. If you get what I'm saying. Like, Julius Randle, if he's your third option on the team, you might have a shot. If he's your fourth option, okay, now we're really cooking, and you know that might be a true playoff contender. Julius Randle as the number one on the team, I can't take you seriously, and that's what I've been arguing with Knicks fans for the better part of a year. Knicks fans insisted that Julius Randle developed under us and is that dude. And I hate to break it to you folks, he's not that dude. And the problem is, now that he got his big money deal, he's not really putting in even remotely close to the effort that he was the past few years, especially last year, in terms of hustling, defending, rebounding, boxing people out. He ain't putting in that work. He is moping. It started well before the thumbs down gesture he gave to the fans when they were booing him. He didn't like it. He tried to take his ball and go home, gave the thumbs down gesture, went on the media silence break. The Knicks ate the fines for him not talking to the media, but he's taking no responsibility for his actions. He ain't bringing it. And even when he has a decent shooting game, because he's just chucking, he's not putting in the work, doing the little things to rebound, like all the little things he was doing last year when it was a contract year. He ain't doing it this year when he already got his money. So I hate to tell the fans they've been bamboozled, but you got what you asked for. You asked for Julius Randle to be here long term, and now this is what you got, because this is who Julius Randle is. You know, a decent player, but he is not that dude. And everyone who's trying to build him up to be that, I'm sorry, you clearly did not understand the caliber of player you're working with. So, again, could Randle rebound and put in the work and the effort? Sure. But I'm not sure what the motivation is. Because people were saying he loves the city, he loves the players, the team. He was in a contract year. I don't know how many different ways I could say it. I do not see this ending well. I think part of the other reason why teams weren't really chomping at the bit to grab him because they knew who Julius Randle was. Now, I get why the Knicks did it because, the fans were clamoring for it. You're not going to get a sign and trade deal for Julius Randle because most teams know who he is. After, getting dealt from the Lakers to New Orleans, so okay-ish play, just there's not much else there. Like teams have seen him. He's known. He ain't a spring chicken. Like he's been in the league enough years now. That's what makes it disappointing that professionally he hasn't risen up to the challenge of when you're a leader and there are actual ramifications and expectations. It ratchets up the pressure. And what you have to do, you have to keep evolving and working harder. He's still playing at the level of no expectations when people were thinking the Knicks were going to be straight trash. And they had the chip on their shoulder. Chip is gone. He got his money. So what's the motivation? And that's what's turning into frustration. And he took it out on the fans. Fans gave it right back to him. And they'll keep giving it to him until he starts playing up to that level of performance. But I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. I can try to sugarcoat it and say this is going to get better for the Knicks. But, I thought the Knicks were a 5 or 6 seed. Realistically, best case scenario. If everything panned out, I wasn't banking on it. But I thought they'd at least be a 5-6 seed or at least make the playoffs. Here's the problem with the Knicks. The East, the talent level, they started catching up. The young players these teams have been drafting, the Clevelands of the world, the Washingtons of the world, who have been bad for so long and just keep getting options to draft people, the Magic too. All these teams are getting stronger. And they have talent. They have better talent than the Knicks. They have better talent. So, you can bring in a Kemba Walker, you can bring in Fournier, but realistically, I don't necessarily see that as a benefit. And when I say the Magic and the Pistons, yes, those teams are bottom dreck of the East. But talent-wise, they're better than the Knicks. They just don't know how to play. But eventually, as we are seeing with Cleveland, eventually it's going to click. And same thing that happened with the Raptors when they did their rebuild. Eventually that's going to click. Hornets, same deal. Eventually it's going to... When you get enough chances to draft players, I always make fun of trust the process because it was just tanking, under a different name. You hope that you land enough high draft picks and get enough of them right that, eventually you'll luck box your way into a solid contender just through the draft. But that's what's happened. You've got a bunch of teams that have had high draft picks that are starting to play well now. And talent-wise, you don't match up. The Knicks do not match up talent-wise some of these other teams. I know everyone wants to, throw praise on RJ Barrett, but I'll be perfectly blunt with you guys. I've said this before. I'll say it again. RJ Barrett does not have any significant closing moves or finishing moves that he can get easy buckets. To me, he could shoot. And when he's on, and he works hard. But RJ Barrett is just Tim Hardaway Jr. under a different name. I know people don't want to hear that. I know people don't want to hear it. But that's who RJ Barrett is. He literally is Tim Hardaway Jr. I know people don't want to hear it. I know they don't want to hear it. And they'll say he's better than Tim Hardaway Jr. He scored more points. You don't know what you're talking about. If if RJ Barrett actually played with a better player and played with it, if he played with a Luka Doncic, his usage rate would go down because you want the ball in a better player's hands. RJ Barrett is playing second fiddle to Julius Randle right now, folks. The truth of the matter is, and Tim Hardaway Jr. got injured, but I want folks to remember when Tim Hardaway Jr. was putting up his numbers for his time with the Knicks the second go around, because we dealt him to the Hawks, and then he came back in another deal. He was averaging 18, 19 points a game, just like RJ Barrett. And I would just tell you guys, you need to start looking through the actual number breakdown of field goal shooting percentage. You can look through it. Like, RJ is a slightly more efficient shooter in terms of the actual percentages, but if you actually look at the attempts, it's not that different from Tim Hardaway Jr., folks. And if you actually look at the game film of when he's trying to finish, RJ Barrett's game matches up very similar to Tim Hardaway Jr. And, Knicks fans turn on players all the time. Everyone wants to talk up RJ, but if we're being honest with ourselves, it's not that different. It's really just not that different than Tim Hardaway Jr. So, again, I like the Cam Reddish trade because I think Reddish is a very good 3-and-D player with playing time when motivated. For whatever reason, that Atlanta group just splintered after the playoff run last year, and Reddish is asked out for a trade. People want to talk up Zion. We'll get to Zion eventually, but there were question marks on the Zion side of things because I can't. If this is all a work to get himself traded, it's a hell of a way to do it because it's a very bizarre way of going about it. Very bizarre. But yeah, we'll talk about Zion another time because I know people are trying to entice the idea of a big three situation in New York. They're not good enough to be a big three. I'm just being honest with you. Like RJ, I told you, if Julius Randle is the fourth option on a championship team, RJ Barrett's probably in that same category. He's probably the fourth best option you want. You don't want him as maybe a third, maybe. I don't know. I'm not entirely sold. RJ's game actually translates into playoffs. That's why he got clapped by the Hawks. Straight up, he got clapped, and there's nothing that he's actually put together on film this year that gives me any confidence that that's really going to change significantly moving forward. So, wish I could be more encouraged about the Knicks. I'm just not. Definitely not there. Anyway, Giants news. Brian Daboll has been hired as the new head coach of the Giants. You had Schoen hired, so the likelihood was Daboll getting the job. I was curious about Daboll taking the Giants job because Mara has basically forced the GM and the head coach to say, we're committing to Daniel Jones instead of letting them do their own independent evaluation. I'm very curious to see what Daboll actually does because to me, the only way to make Daniel Jones work is making him a scrambling QB, and the guy has durability issues that make using him in a more versatile fashion incredibly risky. So, to be perfectly honest, I'm very curious to see what the Giants do because they got a horrible cap situation. You got question marks at the QB position. and many skilled positions on the offense, even though you have talent, they're not properly being used because there was such a terrible focus in other areas than addressing the immediate concerns on the offensive line that it just completely kneecapped the entire team. So yes, could it be true what John Mayer is saying that they've done everything possible to screw up Daniel Jones? Yes, it's entirely possible, but it's not exclusive to say Daniel Jones is still going to end up being a bust for where he was drafted. You're a top 10 QB pick, and your upside, I said this before, his upside, in my opinion, was always Ryan Tannehill. And even if you hear me, I will still reiterate how much I have question marks at times about Ryan Tannehill's true ceiling. It's just not there. It's just not there. Maybe he can be, like I said, Jones can learn to be more efficient, play action, get him scrambling more. But realistically, he ain't even at Tannehill level. The issue I have with Daniel Jones is he may be a Matt Castle, where he can have pop-off games, but more often than not, you're looking at him saying, man, I really wish we had an upgrade at the QB spot. Because, truth be told, it looks very much like it's a ho-hum draft pick that you have positioned as the face of the franchise. But it is what it is. We all have plenty of time to go in depth on the Giants, but wanted to get some thoughts on New York sports at the moment, just because I keep hearing it and folks are just missing the point. Before I get out of here, we'll talk about it in detail tomorrow, but just a couple of things to note for props in terms of the game tomorrow. I am very much in favor of looking at some of these spreads because I'm looking. The spread for the Bengals is too high. I know the Chiefs are at Arrowhead, but like +7's too high. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but this is definitely a T spot. And then in terms of the parlays, I think seeing Joe Burrow over 1.5 touchdowns is a lock. To me, total passing touchdowns over 1.5 is -190. Love that prop bet. And you're going to see completions at over 24.5 for Burrow. I think Burrow being over 24 pass attempts is very likely, as well as the passing attempts. I think Burrow's going to end up throwing 40 plus times in a shootout with the Chiefs. I think that leaning over, and that's not to say Joe Mixon's not going to be relevant in the game. Joe Mixon's going to get work. I just think that from a prop perspective, you're going to see props for Jamar Chase. I think the line was at over 28 yards for his longest reception. Jamar Chase is going to pop one tomorrow. At some point, he's going to have a big completion. I can't see the Chiefs, Diggs and Allen, I have been trying to make work for the entire year. I went down on my sword again, trying to make it work. Just did not work. It's like I got crushed every time I try to force in Stephon Diggs, and it's a mistake I made. It's like I've known how many times I have failed with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen pairing them together, and I still did it on my main build, and it cost me dearly, even though I got the Gabe Davis call right. But the one thing I'm not going to deviate from is knowing that Joe Burrow, even if Jamar Chase is covered, he's going to force that ball into him. And he's going to force in a deep ball, too. So, at a certain point, Joe Burrow's definitely going to take deep shots on this Chiefs defense. Whether or not Jamar Chase is wide open or not, doesn't matter. He's going to throw it and put it in a spot where he thinks Jamar Chase can win a one-on-one battle. And guess what? Jamar Chase can win a one-on-one battle against these Chiefs DBs. So definitely very much in favor of some of these props, especially on the passing side for the Bengals. So check out the reception yardage prop for Jamar Chase, over 28.5 yards. Joe Burrow, total touchdown passes over 1.5, was at minus 190. Take it there. And then you've got even the kicker. So total made field goals for Evan McPherson on the Bengals is over 1.5. Here's the reason why I think it's relevant to be betting it. The Bengals give up so many sacks. I mean, you saw it last week where they gave up 9 sacks to Tennessee. The Chiefs will blitz on the Bengals, and they'll get home. When they get home, especially in the red zone, it's going to knock them out of going for it, so they're going to have to kick the field goal. I think going over 1.5 field goals for McPherson makes a ton of sense, in my opinion. So those were a couple of the prop bets. I will take the under on rushing yards for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Just being perfectly honest, Edwards-Helaire only got the work in later spots when they were trying to do something a little bit different rather than keep running McKinnon. So they were trying to keep McKinnon fresh, but McKinnon was getting the bulk of the work. It's just that I don't think they're trying to run McKinnon into the ground by just giving him the full work share load. But I expect Jerick McKinnon to get 65 to 70% of rushing snaps versus Edwards-Helaire. I think Helaire will have a series or two, but the bulk of the work is going to still stay concentrated with Jerick McKinnon. So I will bet the under 37.5 rushing yards for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If he breaks one, he breaks one. But I'm not sold on Edwards-Helaire getting the yardage even close to that. So I'll take a prop on that. Bet on that prop in order. I just don't see Edwards-Helaire being relevant in the game. So he'll be one of my fades for sure across the platforms once I get my lineup set. But yeah, we'll go into the games in detail tomorrow. But, just wanted to get a couple of thoughts out there with the Brady news and some of the news we've been hearing within New York gambling and talk about the sports teams a bit. So I'm going to get on out of here, but we will definitely be covering these games in detail tomorrow. So stay tuned, folks, and have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.